Okay, Chapter 8, The Age of Miracles, continued. Simon Magus. Simon Magus was another miracle worker who lived in the first and whose miracles were written up in the second century. Simon was the prince of heretics. His miracles were notorious and admitted by all. By Orthodox Christians, they were attributed to magic or to the machinations of Satan. At a later day, it has been supposed they might be accounted for on scientific principles. Dr. Westcott says it would be interesting to inquire how far the magic arts universally attributed to Simon and his followers admit to the physical explanation. In his school, if anywhere, we should look for an advanced knowledge of nature. Moshim is not willing to class Simon among the heretics, since that would be impliedly admitting that he was a Christian, but he concedes that nearly all the ancient and modern writers make him to have been the head, the father, and the ringleader of the whole heretical camp. This conspicuous position makes his opinions of some importance. Theodoret, AD 430, says that he denied that there was but one principle. He asserted two and held that there was another maker of this world. This was the demiurgos, who was under the control of the supreme God who presided over the whole universe. This doctrine was extensively believed in by the Gnostics of the second century. In his system, the third power in the Trinity was a woman. For this, his followers had the authority of the gospel of the Hebrews. Simon held that matter was eternal and that an evil deity presided over it. He was educated at Alexandria. His followers became so numerous that they were spread over the whole world, and in Rome, in the reign of Claudius, a statue was erected in his honor. In the 8th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, we have a glimpse of Simon, who had bewitched the people insomuch that they all gave him heed, from the least to the greatest, saying, "This man is the great power of God." In the recognitions attributed to Clement of Rome, and a portion of which at least was written about the same time with the Acts, there is a fuller account of this wonderful man. As in the Acts of the Apostles, so in the recognitions he appears as the great antagonist of Peter. The reader may be introduced to Peter at Caesarea, where he is preparing for a discussion with Simon Magus. When the day dawned which had been fixed for the discussion with Simon, Peter, rising at the first clock crowing, aroused us also, for we were sleeping in the same apartment, 13 of us all, of whom next to Peter, Zacchaeus was first, then Sophanas, etc. After these, I, Clement, and Nicodemus, then Niceta and Aquila, who had formerly been disciples of Simon and were converted to Christ under the teachings of Zacchaeus. Of the women, there was no one present. Peter then tells them that he has formed the habit of waking in the middle of the night and lying awake till morning, recalling the arranging in the memory the words of the Lord. The conversation turning on the coming discussion, Peter wishes to know what kind of a person Simon is. Niceta thinks he will prove to be a formidable antagonist. Aquila gives a full history of Simon, from which it appears that his father was Antonius and his mother Rachel. By nation, he was a Samaritan of the Getones. His profession was that of a magician, yet exceedingly well trained in Greek literature, desirous of glory, and boasting above all the human race. So that he wishes to be an exalted person who is above God, the Creator, and to be thought to be the Christ, and to be called the Standing One. He uses this name as implying that he can never be dissolved, asserting that his flesh is so compacted by the power of his divinity that it can endure to eternity. Simon had been a disciple of Dositheus and became one of the 30. Aquila proceeds with his story. But not long after, he fell in love with that woman whom they call Luna, and he confided all things to us as his friends, how he was a magician, and how he loved Luna, and how, being desirous of glory, he was unwilling to obtain her ingloriously, but was waiting patiently when he could have her honorably. Yet so if we also would conspire with him in the accomplishment of his desires. Meantime, at the outset, as soon as he was reckoned among the 30 disciples of Dositheus, he began to depreciate Dositheus himself, saying that he did not teach purely or perfectly, and that this was the result not of ill intention but of ignorance. Dositheus when he saw that Simon was depreciating him, fearing lest his reputation among men might become obscured, for he himself was supposed to be the standing one, moved with rage when they met as usual at the school, seized a rod and began to beat Simon, but suddenly the rod seemed to pass through his body as if it had been smoke, on which Dositheus, being astonished, said to him, "Tell me if thou art the standing one, that I may adore thee." And when Simon assured him that he was, Dositheus, perceiving he himself was not the standing one, fell down and worshipped him, and gave up his own place as chief to Simon, ordering all the rank of 30 men to obey him, himself taking the inferior place which Simon formerly occupied. Not long after this, he died. After the death of Dositheus, Simon took Luna to himself, and with her he still goes about, as you see, deceiving multitudes, and asserting that he himself is a certain power which is above God, the Creator, while Luna, who is with him, has been brought down from the higher heavens, that she is wisdom, the mother of all things, for whom, says he, the Greeks and the barbarians contending were able in some measure to see an image of her, but of herself, as the dweller with the first and only God, they were wholly ignorant. He then proceeds to relate a miracle which he, Aquila, once saw, Luna being in the tower and looking out of all the windows of the tower at the same time. Peter evidently believes that Aquila had related, for he says, "It has been permitted to the wicked one to use those arts by which the affections of every one towards the true Father may be proved." The discussion. Chapter 19. Zacchaeus enters, saying it is time. The disputation commenced, for a great crowd collected in the court of the house was awaiting him. Then Peter, having prayed with the brethren, went forth to the court of the house, and when he saw the multitude all looking intently on him in profound silence, and Simon standing like a standard bearer in the midst of them, he commenced. First, he invoked a peaceable discussion, but Simon at once retorted that Christ said he came not to send peace, but a sword. Peter replies, "In the words of Jesus, blessed are the peacemakers." Simon continues to comment upon the inconsistency of Christ if he came not to bring peace, enjoining upon others to keep it. Simon announces his position. "I say," said he, "that there are many gods, and that there is one incomprehensible and unknown to all, that he is the God of all these gods." He then argues for polytheism, saying to Peter that he will prove it from his own scriptures. He cites Genesis 3:5, "On the day ye eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, ye shall be as gods." Also Genesis 3:22, "Behold, Adam is become as one of us." Also Genesis 1:26, "Let us make man after our own image and likeness." And Genesis 3:22, "Let us drive him out." Also Genesis 11:7, "Come, let us go down and confound their language." And Exodus 22:28, "Thou shalt not curse the gods," etc. One of these, says Simon, was chosen by Lot that he might be the God of the Jews. But says he, "It is not of him that I speak, but of that God who is also his God, whom even the Jews themselves do not know. For he is not their God, but the God of those who know him." Peter has a long disquisition on God, to which Simon replies that he would refute him from the words of his master, who said no one knew the Father but the Son, and he to whom the Son should reveal him. Yet the God of the Jews was known to Adam, to Enoch, to Noah, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to Moses. Remember, Simon urges that you said that God has a son, which is doing him wrong, for how can he have a son unless he is subject to passions like men or animals? My opinion is that there is a certain power of the universe, an ineffable light whose greatness is to be held to the incomprehensible, of which power even the maker of the world is ignorant, and Moses, the lawgiver, and Jesus, your master. The reasoning of Simon, that there is one God who is better than all, from whom all that is took its beginning, that he must be perfect, that the God who created the world shows many signs of imperfection. There must therefore be a God over him. He argues the imperfection of the God who made the world and man, thus the many evils in the world which are not corrected show that its creator is powerless if he cannot correct what is done amiss, or else if he does not wish to remove the evils, then he himself is evil. But if he neither can nor will, then he is neither powerful nor good. The dispensation was closed for the day. The audience, of whom there were about 3,000, divided, about 1/3 going away with Simon and the rest staying with Peter. Book 3. The debate is recommenced next day and is continued 2 days longer. The second day, there is some acrimony in the discussion and some difference as to the questions to be debated. They discuss the nature of evil, free will, the power of God, etc. Chapter 23. Simon says, "What I wish to know is this. If what God wishes to be is, and what he does not wish to be is not, the purport of the answer of Peter is that some actions depend upon the will of man." The discussion closed for the day, Simon calling upon Peter each day to show him whether the soul was immortal. Third day, Simon pressing for evidence of the immortality of the soul. Peter argues in favor of it because of the necessity of having a day of judgment, since men do not get their deserts in this world. Simon claims that Peter cannot assert that the soul is immortal, and that he knows if it be proved to be mortal, his religion will fail. But Peter, when he heard him speaking thus, grinding his teeth and rubbing his forehead with his hand and sighing with a profound grief, said, "Armed with the cunning of the old serpent, you stand forth to deceive souls." Chapter 44. Peter, having offered to prove to Simon in one sentence that the soul is immortal, asks him which is the best evidence, hearing or seeing. Simon answers, seeing. Peter then tells him to go to Simon's own house, and entering the inner bedchamber, he would see an image containing the figure of a murdered boy clothed in purple. Simon, hearing this, was smitten in his conscience, changed color, and became bloodless. He then proposed to become a convert, thinking Peter possessed the power of divination. Peter disabused him and admitted that he had only stated what he had been informed of, and spake what he knew and not what he foreknew. Thereupon Simon, seeing himself betrayed, went from one extreme to another, and becoming fairly furious with anger, burst forth as follows. Oh God, here we go. "I stood by and spoke with you in my goodness and bore patiently with you. But now I shall show you the power of my divinity, so that you shall quickly fall down and worship me. I am the first power, who am always and without beginning. But having entered into the womb of Rachel, I was born of her as a man, that I might be visible to men. I have flown through the air, I have mixed with fire, I have been made one body with it. I have made statues to move, I have animated lifeless things, I have made stones bread. I have flown from mountain to mountain, I have moved from place to place, upheld by angels' hands, and have lighted on the earth. Not only have I done these things, but even now I am able to do them, that by facts I may prove to all that I am the Son of God, enduring to eternity, and that I can make those who believe on me endure in the like manner forever. But your words are all in vain, nor can you perform any real works, such as I have mentioned. He also who sent you is a magician, who yet could not deliver himself from the suffering of the cross." To this speech Peter answered, "Do not meddle with the things that belong to others, for that you are a magician, you have confessed and made manifest by the deeds that you have done." At this point in the proceedings, the historian relates, Simon endeavored to make a riot, and the people, in indignation, cast from the court and drove him forth from the gate of the house. It does not appear, however, that Peter denied the truth of what Simon asserted, or that he challenged him to a proof of his miraculous powers. After Simon and his friends had gone, Peter explained to those remaining his reference to the image of the murdered boys. Simon had been deluded by demons, and he had persuaded himself that he had the soul of a murdered boy, ministering to him in whatever office he pleased to employ it. Peter then pronounced a benediction and dismissed the multitude, and thus ended this most remarkable discussion. I'm going to stop right there. Do the rest tomorrow.